Welcome to the very first episode of The Free Fork. My name is Michelle Sadowski, and I am just an ordinary person living an ordinary life, beginning my journey towards healing my gut and prioritizing feel-good foods. My goal is for anybody who's out there who's been struggling with digestive challenges or who has had sort of these blanket diagnoses come at them from medical professionals in their life, or perhaps people who have maybe like a less healthy balance about the way they think about food or emotional connections with food. My hope is not that you start living your life like I live my life, but that you start taking more opportunities to reflect on your own relationship with food and your own habits and to see if there's room for improvement for yourself. My very first episode, it's so exciting. I have no idea what I'm doing, but welcome and I hope you're with me for the journey. Gluten and dairy and caffeine, oh my. I have recently, over the last, call it 6 or almost 8 weeks at this point, have cut out gluten, dairy, and caffeine. And the immediate response from people, they don't care about gluten, they don't care about caffeine. The one thing everyone says is, you don't drink coffee anymore. How do you even survive? You must be exhausted. And that's the reaction I almost always get. My response is the same every single time. I love the romance of coffee. I love the idea of coffee, the joy of a warm sip from something in a mug or in a paper cup. But in reality, drinking it killed my stomach, and I hardly ever even finished a full cup of coffee or even a half a cup of coffee near the very end. But to understand how I've gotten to this place, I kind of need to go backwards. For years, and when I say years, I genuinely mean decades, like this has been a lifelong issue for me. My stomach has been a mess. As a kid, as a grown-up, it's never been good. But I've never had a real concrete diagnosis, no formal diseases, no abnormalities that any GI doctor could identify, any tests or scans or doctors that I saw, like everything that I did, everything turned up negative or turned up exactly how it should look. Meanwhile, I just lived with constant bloating, and I'm talking like, call it 5 days a week, feeling 5 months pregnant. I had gas pain, I had cramping, I had incredibly frequent trips to the washroom, and I'm talking like I would go and have lunch at the office, and then I would be in the bathroom like 2 or 3 times within the hour after I finished eating. It sounds like a horrible way to live, and it actually is. But to be honest, it just became super normal to me, and it never really bothered me. It was just a part of my life. But as a kid, they told me I was lactose intolerant. And so obviously they said stay off dairy. But I briefly went off dairy and I used lactate pills if I was going to eat dairy. And I kind of just gave up on that because I decided that I loved dairy more than I hated having to give it up. And so I just dealt with the consequences most of the time and convinced myself that I could just train my body to be better at digesting dairy. In my 20s, they told me that I have Jewish girl stomach or irritable bowel syndrome, and I really had no options but to kind of just accept the terms. IBS tends to really be one of those catch-all diagnoses that when a doctor can't really explain what it is, they just want to call it something, so they call it that. And I did test positive for the HLA-B27 gene, which if you're not familiar, it's a gene that makes people highly susceptible to inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's and colitis and other inflammatory autoimmune diseases. But again, I have not tested positive for Crohn's or colitis or arthritis or like any of these autoimmune pieces. I just have the gene that makes me susceptible to it. So if you are somebody who has an IBS diagnosis or has had one in the past and you feel unsatisfied with that, then I just encourage you to keep digging a little bit deeper or perhaps speak with a naturopath. More on that in a little bit. In addition to all of my digestive issues, I also started experiencing pain and inflammation in my joints, particularly my hands, which has only gotten worse over time, especially in recent sort of years. I opt for I'll always opt for a computer, but I'll opt, if I'm writing with a pen, I'll opt for one that has a really smooth ink, like rollerball on it, so that I don't have to push down really hard on the pen. And even then, my hand fatigues very quickly. And I'll also have other joint pain in other areas of my body pretty regularly, especially early in the morning, which led my doctors on this like rabbit hole of doctors and tests and scans because they were convinced that I had arthritis. But all of the tests came up negative for any formal causation for any of the inflammation. And I do have hypermobility, which is a real thing. And it does cause pain and inflammation, but there's no really a solution for it. And no doctor refuses to accept that. And so they just wanted me to keep digging and digging and digging. And nowhere along the way did any of these traditional Western doctors, and God love them for all the amazing work they do, but they really are not always in tune with less traditional medicine, or call it alternative medicine, or the direct impact that certain foods and diet and lifestyle habits can have on your body. And so these conversations never came up with any of these doctors at any point. In my now mid-30s, I'm a mom, and I have finally explored the naturopathic option. I went to a naturopath a couple of months ago, and if you are looking for one, I'm happy to pass along the name. I saw Dr. Jody Larry in Toronto. She's wonderful, really, really excellent option, but there's so many really wonderful ones out there. I can only speak for the one that I attended to, but she's great. There's often a clash, I find, between Western medicine and naturopathic roots, but I really wish that I was open to exploring a naturopathic route earlier, because the discoveries that I made with Dr. Jody Larry were life-changing for me. And it wasn't hocus pocus, and it wasn't like a pile of expensive, uncovered, uninsured blood tests. I'm still open to doing that because I am curious, but it wasn't that. And in my my misconception perhaps of what it is to go to a naturopath is that they put you on 20 supplements and, wave a magic wand and make all your problems go away. Or they give you a blood test to figure out all the foods that aren't great for you. And then they tell you you can't eat anything anymore, and then you suffer for the rest of your life. This was not that. It really was a dive into finding root causes to my issues, finding the best path that was for me as an individual, and an exploration of listening to my body and intuitive eating and really intuitive living. It started not as a conversation about supplements and food and whatever. It started as a conversation about our body and our mind and our soul and the interconnectedness of those things within each of us. We really dug into my lifetime of experiences and hardships, of which I've had quite a few. I've had traumas big and small, just to name a very high level few. This is not going to be what this podcast is about, all of my traumas I've lived through, but childhood challenges with my own family, and going through a divorce as a kid with my parents, and having a child during COVID, having my own father pass away and experiencing parent loss, and having a sick parent for 10 years before that and what that was like, navigating my own divorce in my 30s, navigating a new relationship, and blending families and an upcoming wedding. More on that another time. And honestly, just the current state of the world, just to name a few big T's and little T's. We talked about the impact of all of those experiences on our bodies and the way that our gut and our body can quite literally hold on to the pain and the memories of those experiences. It can absolutely impact us just through physical mobility issues, unexplained back pain is a really, really common one for people, or joint pain, or headaches, but also gut and digestive challenges and inflammation, and the list goes on and on. For me, my digestive health took a literal gut punch. And while my brain is well on its way to the journey of healing, and, I've done so much work over the years of my life, and I'm mentally in a great place right now, my body needs time to catch up to my brain. And these are all things that my logical brain, I'm a very logical person, this is something that my logical brain probably already knew, but this time, certain dots were connected for me in a way that they hadn't been before. And I finally got to a point where my stomach was so bad that I would honestly have done anything to change it. And now we're mostly up to speed to about 6 weeks ago, 6 or 7 at this point. We started by just eliminating gluten, dairy, and caffeine from my diet for 2 weeks. I started on a daily probiotic. I also included L-glutamine, and I also included an adrenal supplement that would help with energy and stress reduction. The probiotic and L-glutamine, of course, are more for digestive and immune support. I painstakingly tracked all of my meals, all of my snacks, anything that went in my body, and every related, feeling, symptom, and outcomes in the bathroom for 2 full weeks. And I'm never going to sugarcoat my experiences on this podcast, but I will spare you the gross details unless you really want them, and then you can just send me a private message and we could chat about it. But here are the revelations that kind of came to me just in 2 weeks. Within a few days, I experienced less bloating overall. For me, this was a miracle because I spent so much of my day or so much of my week feeling bloated that within a few days to feel significantly less bloating was heavenly. It was remarkable. After meals, I would feel full, I would feel satiated, but I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel foggy, I didn't feel lethargic, I didn't feel bogged down by whatever it was I had just consumed, but I felt full. I felt satisfied. I mentally missed gluten and dairy. Like, I realized that there is a brain attachment to, call it like gluten or carbohydrates or things like that. There is a mental attachment to dairy. There is, our brain craves things. And then that creates like a response in our mouth. Like, your mouth starts to salivate when you think about some of those things that, when you think about those, like, I'm going to like air quote here, like guilty foods. And I don't think that anyone should ever think of foods as guilty foods. I think that everything can be in moderation. But I had this mental connection to gluten and dairy, and I was missing it a little bit. But I wasn't missing caffeine, not even at all. After a week, I started, I don't weigh myself every single day, but I weigh myself lots of days, and just to get a sense of sort of where I'm at in terms of like the cycle of the month and if I'm more bloated and this and that, and I could really see the impact. But after about a week, I consistently was weighing in 2 or 3 pounds lighter overall. And this was not a goal of mine. It is not a goal of mine to lose weight. I love fitness. I like eating well, but it's not a goal of mine to lose weight. I don't believe that I am in that position. Like, I don't think I need to lose weight. I like strength. But I did notice I was weighing in a couple of pounds lighter regularly. This was probably, I'm not a doctor, but this was probably due to the reduction in bloating and just like the inflammation had gone down so much. My face slimmed down significantly, way less puffiness. And people who hadn't seen me in a few weeks or even a month or 2 months, they were like, "Oh my gosh, did you do something? Like, did you lose weight? Your face, like, everything looks slimmer." And I only actually really notice it now. I look back at pictures even from like a few months ago, and there is a major difference in the puffiness that I was experiencing. By the second week, my stomach aches and my cramping almost completely stopped, which was like just as impactful as the bloating for me, because I was, like I mentioned, like, I would go to the office, I would have lunch. Let's say my lunch was like a salad with tuna and a bagel or something, like very simple. And I would be in the bathroom, to mention that like I would have a coffee in the morning and then I would have that lunch later. And I was in the bathroom multiple times after I'd have that lunch, maybe 2 times, sometimes 3 times within the hour or 2 after lunch was over. And by the second week, my stomach aches and cramping went from, call it 80% of the time to like less than 5% of the time, almost nothing. I also started to notice the beginning of more regularity without getting into too many details. This is still like a really big goal for me, and it's going to take a lot of time to become like truly, call it regular. And then by the second week, I stopped missing gluten and dairy. And I started craving things that were actually going to be fueling my body in a good way that would make me feel good. And I started to have certain responses to things that wouldn't make my body feel good, which I'll explain like in a moment. But my body was shifting, like my responses to foods, like my mental response to thinking about food was shifting. And I realized that you are what you eat. Like, it's not bullshit to say that you are what you eat. What we put in our body really, really matters. I started to listen to my body more. And I was trying to explain this earlier, that sometimes our body tries to tell us things that we ignore because our brain gets in the way. Our brain controls cravings. Our brain controls our emotional connections to food. Our brain controls disordered relationships with food. Our brain controls the way we think about food as a reward. I got through X, so now I get to eat Y. I worked really hard on this, so now I get to eat that. We have immediately created this connection for ourselves, and we shame ourselves about food also, or thinking about what we've eaten already in that day. Like, everything is just so controlled by our brain. But if we put our brain aside for a moment, then we start to listen to our body and what our body is telling us it wants. Then things can start to change. We can start to live a more intuitive lifestyle. Now, don't get me wrong. The idea of a cheesy pasta still makes me salivate. I have not been freed from the idea that I know what I'm missing. I know that pasta is delicious, and I know that a melty cheese on a nice piece of pizza is delicious. I know all of these things. I still want those things. I still think they're delicious, and I encourage you, if you can eat it without feeling horrible after, then enjoy it. Please enjoy it and just tell me everything. But we watched the movie Nona's on Netflix and I drooled the entire time. But my priorities have shifted. What's important to me has shifted, and I have felt too good after this change to go back. An example of sort of how my body has started responding differently to food. After those 2 weeks were up, my naturopath suggested that I could slowly start to introduce dairy if I really wanted to, just to see how it feels. She mentioned, like, as an example, you can sprinkle some feta on a salad. And when she said that, the thought of feta literally made me nauseous. And I shit you not, like, I used to love feta on my salads. My body just had this physical response to something that it knew would make me feel unwell long before my brain could even get in the way. And so that like feeling, it's almost like if you recall your university days where you like maybe drank a little too much of like one particular type of alcohol and then it made you sick. And then the smell or like the thought of that alcohol for the rest of your life or for a significant time after, you wouldn't even go near it. You wouldn't even touch it. I was in a pattern where I would eat something, it would make me feel sick, but I loved it so much that I would go back and eat it anyways. Now, my body is responding differently. Now, my body is saying, don't do that. Remember how it made you feel. It's not going to make you feel good. Don't eat that unless you like, have a little bit or like not so often, but like just remember how it makes you feel. So I started listening to my body so much more. I've also naturally dropped alcohol for the most part. I'm not completely alcohol free. I used to have wine often with dinner. And the thought of wine has really, my body has a similar response to that for whatever reason. Maybe it's the high sugars, maybe it's whatever it is. I'll still have like, a nice tequila on ice once in a while with lime, maybe a little bit of soda water, but I'm not really interested in drinking. Like it didn't make me feel good. It didn't make my stomach feel good and it didn't respond well. So as I've gotten older, I've started to kind of feel meh about drinking. And the same thing kind of went for refined and added sugars. To be fair, I didn't really eat a lot of sweets in the first place. So it's not that much of a shift for me to not really want a lot of sweets now, but I'm more mindful about what I'm putting in my body because I know that you are what you eat. I never had a formal directive from the naturopath or anybody to drop alcohol or drop sugars. It just wasn't in our plan that we had discussed, but it just kind of happened. And so my body honestly simply didn't want it when it was offered. Like we had family dinners for Rosh Hashanah and we had family dinners for Yom Kippur after. There was dessert on the table and I kind of was just like, I'm good. When I do want something sweet, like I'm not going to tell myself I can't have it. I do have it, but I just listening more to what my body wants in a moment and not what I feel I should do given the circumstances. I've also started to be more intuitive when it comes to portion sizes. I am not about to tell you to reduce your portion sizes. I'm not. Sometimes I'm really hungry and I eat multiple servings of what's in front of me. And sometimes I'm really not super hungry and I eat less or I eat less frequently or whatever it is. But I'm more intuitively letting my body guide the way in terms of what I'm eating, how often I'm eating, and how much I'm eating in that moment. And I am trying to eat less quickly because a big thing for me is that sometimes I'm so short for time that I'm like gobbling up my food so quickly that I don't even have time to breathe. So I'm trying to, just be more intentional about the way that I eat and not shove food in my face as quickly as possible. But I'm following my body in terms of how hungry I am when I'm sitting down to a meal. If I need to eat more snacks in a day, like I need to have more fruit, if I need to have more vegetables, if I need to pack extra things for lunch when I'm at the office or whatever it is, I'm certainly not shaming myself for eating more or eating less. I'm just listening to my body. And at dinner last night, like I was sitting with my husband, the two of us were having dinner, and he goes, "You're really enjoying food more." And I said, with a mouthful of homemade sheet pan kebabs, which is going to be in a later episode, I was like, yeah, I am. Like every bite was like, oh my God, this is delicious. This is amazing. And what I realize is I'm enjoying food more because I know it's not going to make me feel horrible after I'm done eating it. So I'm happy to be enjoying food more. So it's about, call it 7 weeks in. I've been diving into this lifestyle as in gluten-free, dairy-free, caffeine-free, intuitive eating girly. And I'm trying all the recipes. I'm looking at all the alternatives and all the substitutes. I am completely on board with fueling my body with things that make me feel good and that contribute to my overall wellness. And whatever things I might miss are not generally worth going backwards on in terms of like compromising the progress I've made towards healing my gut. But obviously, there are special occasions and there are parties and there are nights out. And I don't live in a black and white world. And I do have balance. So when I met with my naturopath for a follow-up appointment, we kind of came to this place where I was like, generally speaking, I'm going to maintain like a 90-10 lifestyle or even a 90 lifestyle. I'm not going to let food restrictions own me. I'm still going to enjoy my life. When I go to a restaurant with friends or with my husband, or like, I'm probably going to order majority gluten-free, dairy-free items. And like, thank you, shout out to the restaurants who are flexible, who label their menus, who have gluten-free substitute options, who are like so willing to accommodate and to like make it easy for people who have intolerances or have, allergies particularly, who make it easy for those people to go and enjoy a night out. But I also won't be like, if the best thing on the menu is this like crazy mac and cheese pie, I'm not going to not try it. I do recognize that I'm incredibly fortunate that what I am dealing with, what I'm going through, what I'm living like, it's not a life-threatening allergy for me. I don't have celiac disease and I don't have a dairy allergy. I have intolerances for sure, but I do not need to stress about cross-contamination. And I have the utmost empathy for those who do. And I recognize that there is a significant difference between lifestyle preferences and life-threatening concerns. And this is not in any way to minimize the experiences of people who are living with like serious gluten and dairy allergies. But this is just from, this is where I'm at in terms of my journey. And I just want to express like extra empathy for people who do have that. It makes life even harder, especially when the menus state that they can't control cross-contamination. Like I get stressed out for all those people. But I can only really speak to my own, my preferences and my experiences. The reality is that for me, if I spend all of this time and energy working on healing my gut now, however long that might take me, and that could take me years, it's going to give me more lenience in the long run for when I want to eat things that historically have had a negative impact on me. So for what? What now? Here in this space, both on like my Substack and on my podcast, I hope to share tips and kind of revelations of things that have worked for me, recipes that I've tried and whether or not you should even bother or whether or not they were an absolute home run, like office gluten-free, dairy-free lunch ideas, like quick on the go, easy filling, reviews of gluten and dairy-free substitutes that can be found in everyday grocery stores or at least online, local gluten-free and dairy-free friendly shops or restaurants or cafes, and just overall wellness tips and observations of my own journey. What I will not do is pretend to be someone I'm not. I don't love salad. I've never really loved salad. I've always wanted to be a salad girly, but I'm just not. And the things that I've always liked the most about salad are the things in the salad that aren't salad, like the protein and the croutons and the cheese and like all the other fun stuff. I do actually love a good kale Caesar salad, and we make ours like with the tahini dressing instead. So I guess not really a Caesar, just a kale salad with tahini dressing. But that mostly hasn't changed. I still like kale salad. But just like a regular leafy salad, I find myself really unsatisfied after eating a salad. And so this is not going to be a blog or a podcast about salad. I've never also really liked sweets and pastries so much, like I mentioned. And I find that all of a sudden, like you go gluten-free and it's like, here are all the pastries you can eat as a gluten-free person. Like it's, I guess, people who have been gluten-free, maybe the thing they miss the most was the pastries. I like functional things like bread and bagels and pitas and things like that, but I don't really like sweets. So I'm not going to be eating so much of that because I didn't really eat so much of that before. My focus is generally on protein, good, clean protein. We order from an amazing grocer, East Angus Grocers, if you're in Ontario or Toronto, GTA. And you bulk order your protein for the year. You get it in 3 shipments. You can change up your shipments if there was something you got and you didn't like it, whatever it is. And there's so many options in terms of protein, but they're all organic and hormone-free, antibiotic-free, flash frozen, vacuum sealed, individually portioned, like into like individual packets. And we have a freezer downstairs, absolutely full of protein. I love protein. It's where I get the majority of my energy. And I also will be focusing on finding substitutes that are not full of fillers or other additives that end up just causing you more potential harm than the item you're actually avoiding. And I would much rather make an item at home using whole, clean ingredients than buy something that's full of additives. But sometimes plant-based isn't healthy for you because it's just like full of other crap. So I will tell you how to spot those in a moment. When I was writing my corresponding blog post to this, I was sitting there eating lunch. That day, I was having a gluten-free wrap with organic hummus, homemade gluten-free chicken schnitzel, and some arugula. My schnitzel was amazing. There's an upcoming episode about that one. So good. The gluten-free spinach wrap was gross. Wouldn't eat it. I think when I wrote the blog, I gave it a 6 out of 10. I think I'm downgrading it because I've had so many good things since then. I think I'm downgrading it to like a 4 or 5 out of 10. It was just dry and crusty and bad. The organic hummus is Sunflower Kitchen. So good. 10 out of 10. Gets a perfect score on the app that I'll mention to you. It's amazing. Absolute home run. And the arugula was just so that I had some greens in there. Honestly, it was like to fill it up a little bit. In future posts, I'm happy to share my lunch ideas. I'm happy to share brands of substitutes that I'm trying and my honest feedback on them, in addition to their score on the Yuka app. IUKA. Yuka. It's not an ad for Yuka. They don't pay me anything. This is literally just a great resource for analyzing ingredients in our groceries, and I refuse to gatekeep this for people. You can scan the barcode of any grocery item and also beauty and skincare items. To see the breakdown. It gives it a score out of 100 in terms of, call it, cleanliness, and it breaks it down for you. So if it got a 60, which is not a horrible score, but if it got a 60 out of 100, it will break down for you what the score's components were. If it got a 13 out of 100, so many things get low scores, it will tell you exactly which additives, which fillers, which thickening agents, which sugars, which whatever it is that they've added in there, it will break down for you the ingredients. And if you're sitting at the grocery aisle, standing at the grocery aisle, and you're comparing 2 different kinds of yogurt, scan them both and pick the one that has a better score. Like if it makes no difference to you financially, if it makes no difference to you from a brand loyalty perspective, if they're both the same flavor, both the same fat content, both the same whatever, pick the one that has a higher score. And the same can be said for anything in the grocery store. I will always reference recipes and people and authors and places and stores and shops, and I will do my best to name them, tag them, link to them, whatever I can do. And if by chance I've ever missed something or I've made it like I've tagged or linked something incorrectly, please let me know, because I do believe that proper credit is always deserved. And lastly, I recognize that what works for me may not work for you. And what works for you may not work for me. But if you are interested in following along on my gut healing wellness journey, please feel free to subscribe and follow along for updates, send along questions, send along suggestions, and any topics of interest you'd like for me to cover. And with that, welcome to the Free Fork. Thank you for being here. With love, Michelle.